Hello and welcome to the Cinebums podcast. Um, it is a beautiful Saturday morning. I think at least for me.
It's
I
not
don't
for
know.
me.
I
So
don't know. I could tell. I could see the doubt on your face the second I said that. Was it gray over there?
that it's literally like in the all week it was in the 70s and sunny, and then today it's snowing. So
Wow.
that's Colorado weather though. It
Then
just
it's a perfect day then, specifically for John to talk mental
yes.
health, because
Yeah.
he's depressed in Colorado because
Yeah.
he has a it's a shitty Saturday
I'm
over
snowed
there.
in. So yeah, I gotta talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've talked a little bit about mental health before on the show. Sometimes like very directly. I recall one, in the middle before when I was still living at my parents' house post COVID, I was like drinking. I think matcha at home was just starting to become a thing. I'm a big matcha guy. I don't know about you, John, but
Not really, actually.
some people
Not
aren't. Yeah.
I don't
Uh,
dislike it, but I've just never really become a matcha guy. Yeah.
no,
I
I'm
don't
a
know.
matcha man. I'm a matcha man.
Matcha man.
To take when I take a break from my coffee and my yerba mate, I drink matcha.
Nice.
Um, and I think I was living with my parents still post COVID, and they were just bought like some powder to make your own matcha at home. So I made one of those, and I was watching The Terminal for one of our episodes, and this matcha really got me like very jittery and kind of sad and emotional. I don't I wish I could remember that brand of matcha to maybe steer, tell people to steer away from it, because
Yeah, right.
it wasn't just the one day thing. I remember trying it again another day and the same thing happening.
Dang.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it put me in a really anxious, kind of negative, sad place. And I already was kind of in a very anxious place because I was just like, God damn, I'm like 28 or whatever, and I'm still living at home post COVID, and I work in the liquor industry, and this sucks. And I've no light, and you in in one of those struggling to see the light at the end of the tunnel moments.
Yeah.
And I remember, and then I came on I didn't cancel. I came on the podcast, and I just talked through it instead of talking about the terminal. Um, and before I knew it, I think I had John a little sad and anxious too.
Yeah, you really did a good job of bringing me down with you too. Yeah. I was in a great mood that day before.
Yeah. The podcast ended, and you were just like, "What just happened?" Yeah, we pulled it through. I was always like, I think a friend told me that that episode he like enjoyed it, so that kind of made me feel better about doing it and putting it out. Because it's not something I ever wanted to listen to. Um, But I like went to my friend's place after, and I remember I was still feeling it, and I need my friend. Like my friend was like giving me weed and beers and trying to calm me down, and food. And I was just like, oh man, life.
Yeah.
So on that note, today's episode is about mental health, specifically in movies, and feeling, whether it's you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, depressed. I don't know if there's any others? I think those are the ones we should cover because we
Top
don't have
two, probably. Yeah.
yeah, we don't have experience. We shouldn't say bipolar because we don't have experiences with that.
I can't, yeah,
Or
schizophrenia, I can't
yeah,
help anyone with. I
insanity. We're
don't.
not talking that. We're just talking like depression, anxiety,
Hmm.
very basic general ones that everyone has nowadays, I would say.
Yeah. Just for when you're
Everyone.
feeling bummed out, or just like sad. When you got to
Yeah.
pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
man. And I
yeah.
feel like I definitely come from I have like a lot of direct experience with this. Uh like admittedly in my 20s, there have been a lot of There's a lot of time where my mental health was not great. And I'm not saying because I have like um like a clinical, like I'm a depressive or, you know, I don't know, like a Tony Soprano depressive where I need to be put on medication. I think when you're young, you're stupid. So I've made some choices that have led to me being depressed. And then I realized later, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, well, no wonder you were depressed. You were doing that. Like you isolated yourself or you
Yeah.
didn't want to get a job or you something or other, or just um I didn't know how to face life to the point where I was just paralyzed by anxiety that I just was like, I am going to stay on this couch where I am because I know how to
Yeah.
do it. I know how to do it here. I don't know anything outside of this apartment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, stay in the comfort zone. That
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
And then
it's so
it
easy.
feels
Yeah.
good at first, but then in tremendous, the mental health problems come later, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I easily slip into that self-isolation state, especially in my 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very
Yeah.
easy.
I would be doing like jobs that I hated and it would be, full-time 9 to 5 stuff and then I wouldn't want to spend my free time like going and doing things because I was like, oh, this is my only time to like chill
Yeah.
and so I would like I was canceling so many plans and just not, you know, I was never the one to like make plans when I was in these states too, because I just never wanted to do anything. I would just I would just watch Norm Macdonald live clips for an entire evening because I just wanted to completely forget about going to work the next day. And
Yeah,
those
yeah.
were the lowest of lows. Um, but yeah, there's movies that I've always sought out
That you've
these
turned to as well.
certain movies. Yeah, turn to movies to help in these scenarios. Even recently too. I feel much better in a much better place. I don't know about you than I did in like my mid 20s, but
Sure. I mean, I do. I
better
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 I
ma at
better feel
managing.
better than that because I mean,
Yeah.
I had nowhere to go but be way better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'll say too to anyone who's in there. I recently crossed the 30-year-old threshold, and I gotta say, if you're in your 20s and you're in these depressive, anxious states, that, your entire life is your 20s, it gets better. So,
Because it's not just your 20s. Yeah.
yeah, you really start to care about a lot less as time goes on. So, and I'm still only 30. I'm still pretty young. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of it was I was especially when I was like 24, 25, and 26, I was very much dreading 30. That was like
Hmm.
everything to me. And I turned 30 in a week, actually.
Go.
And I don't really care anymore because I think I put so much energy into not wanting to be 30 that like I've worn it out, you know? Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of yeah, I don't know, once you get there, it's kind of like relieving because it's like, all right, you've done it. Now I don't know, there's this like thing in your 20s too where you feel like this is when you're like figuring everything out for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like it's starting now. And yeah, and then of course I people say this all the time, but nobody has it figured out and nobody ever does. It's about managing and figuring out how to manage yourself or whatever. And the movies we're going to talk about today help you manage that along the way.
Man, we gotta quote that. It's about managing, figure out how to manage. Yeah, that's quote of the day right there. Um, yeah, so we've prepared a bunch of movies for those who might be struggling with their mental health now, or you just maybe you're having a great experience in life right now, and just for when you know some of your anxiety and depression comes back, which um sorry to be a downer, it definitely will.
It never goes away. Yeah.
These are the movies for when that happens. And I think like especially as like I've been someone who's been Um, you know, when you're a very, like you said, you have an isolation tendency when you're being overwhelmed, which I've definitely had to an absurd degree. You need movies and things like that and content and like to feel like you're um, hanging, you have someone you're connecting with and hanging out
Yeah.
with. And honestly, like say someone like Norm Macdonald or some of these films, you probably will connect with them better than a lot of the stupid people you, not to bash anyone's friends, but a lot of the stupid people you might hang out with who, you know, don't have their acts as well done as Norm. You
Yeah.
might connect with Norm better. So I almost uh I totally get why you would rather hang out with, in your bad state, Norm Macdonald than say like have drinks with your friends or something at the bar and
Hmm. Yeah.
listen to them talk about their jobs too or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Everybody has to deal with something, but sometimes you just want to like indulge in uh your own shit. And parasocial, that I think that is the good thing about these parasocial relationships nowadays, like with whatever podcasts or
Yeah.
other shows you listen to. Maybe someone out there has a parasocial relationship with us and the Cinebums, but but it's like it's kind of like a nice escape to like your own world. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's when you really connect with something that
Yeah.
you're watching, and it's
Yeah.
like solely you feel connected with it personally, no matter if someone else, yeah, another friend or someone doesn't. Yeah.
I have like a good example of that and like a bad example of like the parasocial stuff. The bad, I'll start with the bad. Like I had a roommate once who was just addicted to the Joe Rogan experience, and
Yeah.
you just heard it through the vents in our apartment, like all day, every day that he's listening to it, and we
Yeah.
would just get so triggered by it. That I was like, this guy only watches Joe Rogan. And this all he does in his
Yeah.
life, ever. And it would be really annoying because if he would ever come out and talk to you, he would just start talking. He would clearly be like quoting something from Joe Rogan or bringing up some
Yeah.
idea that he would have never had if it weren't for Joe Rogan, you know? And
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot
He's
of
just,
men who are also doing that nowadays
oh,
too, where they you just they'll start talking to you. I'm like, dude, do you listen to Joe Rogan? Like this idea is so Joe Rogan that you're telling me right now. And then the good example I have is like I used to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a lot, and I just kind of like, and I was like trying to analyze why I watched it a lot, and I think it was just because like I saw Cliff and who's the other guy? Who's Leo in that? Cliff and
uh, is it like Dalton? Something Dalton?
Rick Dalton. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Rick
yeah. I
Dalton.
saw
Yeah.
Cliff and Rick. Cliff and Rick were kind of like my bros, they were like uh my drinking buddies, my like lonely, and they're also like they're both kind of lonely in that movie, I feel like, and kind of like lone wolves, outcasts. That's kind of what's cool about it. So I just saw them kind of as my uh my lonely drinking buddies that I didn't have. So like I would watch that movie repeatedly just to like hang out with those guys pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where, yeah, that's it can be like a comfort thing too. It's like you feel like you got like it's like go the in the old days you would go to your bar like Cheers where everybody knows your name and you just like it's just comfortable.
Right.
You
That's
whatever
part of the
happens
theme
in your day
song,
doesn't
right?
matter.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's just like you always have the bartender to be like your therapist in a way.
Right.
So,
Right. The
yeah.
old school way, which
Yeah.
I've tried to do, and it was too sad for me. Like during my Chicago days, I like lived above a bar, and I remember I was like, I'm gonna try to be one of those like guys here. And then I
Yeah.
would
Wait,
sit there,
Norm from Cheers. Yeah.
yeah, and I'd sit there and I would just be like so uncomfortable, and I would just get hungry. I would just get hungry. And I'm like, all right, back to my place.
Yeah, maybe the old school bar ways aren't for everyone, but But yeah.
All right. All right, yeah, we could get in some of those films then if you
Yeah.
want to start us off with.
Sure, yeah, I'll start us off. I'm gonna start off with pro it's probably the easiest one, the one that came to me first.
Mm,
And we've done a revisited episode on it, which you should go back and check. This was years ago. But the Truman Show is
mm,
one for me, where it's a guy who feels he's been going through the motions and like conforming
yeah,
to the society that's like presented to him, and um, he's suddenly starts to feel like very disconnected from that society, and like he's not wanting to just go along with um, yeah, with what everyone else seems to just like around him. I mean, they're because they're actors, obviously, but to him, it's like everyone's just conforming to this system that is life, and he's looking for more out of it. So yeah, it's always been a movie that is super uplifting because it's
yeah.
kind
There's
of
a real inspirational element of escape to it.
oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, just escaping what I don't know, maybe
your day-to-day
society or just
existence. Yeah,
yeah, or what even your mental health is like putting on you. Like you have to self-isolate and avoid this in life and do
yeah,
this and instead of going out and living the life you want to live. So yeah, the Truman Show, that's always been like a peak comfort movie, I think. And just at the end too, I love how it just ends without seeing what Truman goes on to do out in the
right.
real
It
world.
leaves it
Like,
open-ended and
yeah,
yeah.
which is kind of like life, you know? Life is open-ended and there's no script or storyline that you follow. So
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, and that end scene is just so great too. So that's always been
Yeah.
a one. I remember watching it when I was younger and feeling like so uh motivated by life after it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's an easy pick for me is a Truman Show.
Yeah, it's a great pick. Yeah, Jim Carrey movies in general are a great mental
Yes.
health escape thing. Um yeah, I remember like some of my family members I like on my dad's side would they would just be watching Jim Carrey movies constantly. Like every time we went over there, like Dumb and Dumber would be on. And I'm like, these guys just like year round watch like Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura and like The Liar Liar and like all these and go back and forth. And I was like, and then I like as I got older, I realized I'm like, oh, they need to watch like the Jim
Yeah.
Carrey movies year round. Like it's these movies are helping them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an antidote for stress of life. Um,
Yeah. And then this is probably like outside of maybe Eternal Sunshine, uh like Jim Carrey's most like artistic avant-garde film, especially when you're talking about
yeah.
the ending which is so great and beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a real like uh emotional performance. It's not he's always kind of like a wacky offbeat character. And yeah, and this he's much more subdued, but he's still like Jim Carrey. He
Yeah,
still
yeah.
kind of has that like he can go get into these like crazed sort
Yeah.
of states, but it's more like humanized and um like how we can all get like, just because he's really starts when he's like talking to his wife and she's like, "Oh, and like Folgers coffee or whatever." And he's like, "Who are you
There's
talking to?"
nobody there.
Yeah, he's just like it's just driving him crazy. And
Yeah,
that's a part of it too. Like you can get frustrated with I don't know, anything in life. Uh like what is it like feeling like this has no meaning? Like what is the point of all this?
right.
Um and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I
There's
do
a lot
think
of
yeah.
parallels to real life in this like
Hmm.
fake the fake world he's in. Like there's still a lot of truth about even if you're not in a dome in Burbank, like, in the biggest, soundstage or whatever ever built, like there's a lot of parallels that I take always to my own life when I watch that.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like it's a really it's an easy movie to connect with on a personal level. yeah, no matter what you're going through, because obviously none of us have been in that situation, or at least we don't think we are. But I think
Right.
everybody kind of at times does feel like you're the character in this
Yeah, yeah,
show that
yeah.
you kind of don't have control over your life because isolated
No,
in your own
yeah, no, I
world.
get what you mean. Like
Yeah.
it induces a paranoia of like
Yeah.
that, oh, the world is built around and catered around me, but it's built around and catered to keep me in this like really boring humdrum life that I have or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
To keep me like just doing nothing, really.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I forget where he wants to travel in there. It's not Fiji. Fiji's Heat.
Yeah.
Where does he
It
is
is
it
Fiji.
Fiji?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. In Heat, that's where
Yeah,
Neil
that's right. Yeah.
McCauley also wants to go. So they have maybe they'll see each other there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Um, but yeah, that's a good pick. I was thinking about this the other day because I was like, I've been sending you a lot of Jim Carrey clips.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking like, is like Jim Carrey like the greatest comedic talent like ever, you know? Like he's because he's really up there and like um
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think there was I feel like there was a phase. Well, I mean, I know like my cousins and I, we devoured any Jim Carrey movie growing up, that was like that is where I think just Jim Carrey in general is kind of like a comfort watch. Obviously, there's a lot of hilarious people like Will Ferrell and
yeah.
so many people that have like the biggest comedy movies ever.
Yeah.
But there's something that's like very like special and unique about Jim Carrey, I think.
Yeah. When I watch like Will Ferrell, like I feel like there's something more like there's something more effortless. Like he can just like be there and it's just, there's not even much he has to do. But like when I watch Jim Carrey, I'm like watching just like this man go like deep into like he like
Yeah.
really transforms like for all of it. And it's I like there's nobody who's doing exactly that, you know?
Yeah. Like maybe this is one you sent me too, or you maybe you've seen this too, but when he's on Letterman and he just kind of goes crazy out of nowhere. It was like a pre-planned bit, but I forget how it starts, but all of a sudden he's just like screaming and freaking out. And maybe he's making fun of Tom Cruise on Oprah or whatever, but he all of a sudden just like goes through the crowd and he's just like high-fiving all these
Oh.
people in the crowd. He just starts like these are clearly like plants in the audience, but he just like grabs this woman and just like kisses her super passionately and then goes over to this man and then just grabs him and kisses him passionately and then like picks him up and throws him over his shoulder and then runs out of the studio into the street. And he like takes his shirt off and he's just going, if you haven't seen it, you
I've
definitely need,
never seen that. No.
oh, you got to see this. Yeah, he just goes crazy and it's just for this random bit on Letterman, but it's just so funny. And it's just, yeah, nobody else could really, I don't know, could do that
Yeah.
like him. All right. Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
that's the Truman Show.
All right.
Jim Carrey too. Yeah.
So my first one is a it's a 2023 movie actually that I saw like back in February and kind of definitely inspired me to talk about movies like this. Um it's Vim Vendor's Perfect Days.
Nice.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, this movie is a great mental health movie for me just because like it's about a guy who he's just cleaning toilets in Tokyo and but he has a very minimal existence, but he is finding like the beauty and happiness that he can out of it, like always in almost some sort of Zen way. Like he's just very simplistic. He just listens to cassettes and records and reads books and uh very much about I love movies that are just about routine, which this movie is. It's just about routine. It's kind of like another movie that I'm going to talk about and out of this movie like in such a material world we exist in, and I live in such a material city that's filled with bullshit. Perfect Days really brought me down to like, oh man, like it's really not about much. Like, and he's doing it in Tokyo too, which I'm sure has a lot of material
Yeah.
and bullshit too. But and the movie doesn't feel like it even takes place in, 2024, whatever, the modern age, because you're spending your time with a guy who's so simple that, and so kind of living in the past that you almost are escaping from that, which I love. But I love how it's not like, say, set in the period where everyone was reading books and listening to cassette tapes. It's set now, but it's a guy who's like choosing to fill his brain with that. You know.
Yeah.
And like the only time a cell phone is seen is like the to make an ironic thing, like an ironic joke when his niece is like, "Is it on Spotify?" And he's like, "What's Spotify?" or
Yeah.
something like that. Um, and like the man just like in the middle of his day of cleaning toilets has lunch in a park and just, he takes a video of like the trees and how they look in the sunlight, like really simple, like just beauty in everyday life. Yeah, and movies like this help you kind of see that, because I think that um we're we take in so much bullshit through everyday life that we don't see that. We forget about finding like the joy and beauty out of just the simplest of things, just like reading and being in nature and just listening to a good album, and just that album, not like going down playlists, or like, I think Spotify is almost it's too much freedom. Like it's great, but
Yeah.
it's too much freedom. There's something about just giving in to like one book or one record or one film, or just something like that. And that's what Perfect Days kind of reminded me in our this era where where we love to play video games and listen to podcasts at the same time, and just
Yeah.
our attention spans are messed up, and we're talking to people but also on TikTok or something like that. Perfect Days is a great like bring you down, like calm yourself, like you don't need all this shit. And I love how it's like, there's just like mostly every day is the same, but then there's like one day where, his niece shows up and she wants to spend the whole day with him, and then another day where he's just hanging out at an izakaya that he's like a regular at, and he's the only one eating there, and it's just like the little things, or a day where he's riding his bike around,
Yeah.
just yeah. Yeah, and I think the movie also shows that like he comes from a family that seems to like it had money, and like he had once a career with promise,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he seems to have a lot of family issues or something like that, baggage that they don't talk about, but he turned his back on that completely. Um, and yeah, it's all mindset, and especially in film, mindset is like framing. And like most of us would like really look down on doing a job like he has. But
Yeah.
there's something so nice about watching him grab like that same canned cup of coffee every morning, and popping in a Lou Reed cassette and driving like early before anyone's up in Tokyo to get his day started, that you're like, now this is the life. This is the
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
When really we all just want to work from home, because we're
Yeah.
being spoiled. But like, yeah, yeah. So that's why I feel like if you're looking for a good mindset switch up, uh, or it's just some different perspective, yeah, I'd highly recommend Perfect Days.
Yeah. It's a great pick.
All
All right.
right.
Well, I'll just get right into my next one. Um, and I don't know if this will be a shocker or anything, but my next pick is Apocalypse Now.
Na, 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 na.
Yeah.
This is the end. Du, du, du.
Nothing
Flames.
uplifts me more
A
than
jungle goes into flames.
yeah. Nothing helps my mental health more than napalm in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
Ah, I think
Okay.
you're just about to do Ride of the Valkyries, and
Yeah,
then
yeah. I
we
was in the
cut you
middle of
off.
it. But yeah. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I
I mean, I
need.
love this
Yeah.
movie. But yeah, definitely surprising pick for mental
Yeah.
health.
And so I actually watched this the other night. Um, well, the Apocalypse Now Redux, um, which is actually I think the past two times I've watched that. So now I can't remember what
So you watched the
was
very
has been
extended
added.
edition then? Like the
Yeah.
director's. Yeah, it's like really long. Like there's
Yep.
the opium French scene and stuff like that.
That's what. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to remember what was added because I haven't watched the
Yeah.
original in a while now.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a bunch of I'm trying to remember what else is added, but a lot of just random things along that boat ride that didn't happen before mainly. Uh
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I was this was the other night when I got home from work, uh, and I was just feeling like, when you just get in those moods where you just feel like kind of like shitty and down and not excited about anything for whatever reason. Maybe it's just whatever happened at work that day, and you just need to escape into something. And I'd say I thought about including something like 2001 or like Lord of the Rings or something. It's kind of like a big epic that you could totally escape into.
Yeah.
And Apocalypse Now really feels like you're in a trance watching this movie. And I think what it did for me that night when I was just like not having it with life is that yeah, I got taken into this world that was a little like psychedelic um and I almost felt like Kilgore, like Robert Duvall, where
Mhm.
he's talking about surfing and napalm and all this like he's on this beach while there's just like what mortar fire and like all these like explosions happening behind him and he's just like kind of like
He's
content.
numb to all of it.
Yeah, he's numb to all of it. And I feel like watching Apocalypse Now, when you're kind of in this like overwhelmed by the world state, it's kind of like yeah, you're you're sort of you're accepting the horrors of the world, but you're not letting it affect you in a way because ultimately there's the shitty stuff in life that can happen. Um, but rather than get so like anxious about it, I was just sort of like I was accepting my anxieties and stuff and realizing it's a part of life and sort of like thinking to in a cynical sort of way. It was like um this is like a mental health for me in a cynical way where not I'm just disillusioned and there's people can be horrible and awful and the world can be horrible and awful, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of getting through that, getting up the river,
Mhm.
finishing your mission, what you need to do, and kind of just having to, you just ultimately have to deal with life. Um, and I think that's what I did on this night. I just watched this. I like escaped into this. I was like, you got to deal with with whatever shit gets thrown at you in life and move forward up the river. And then you gotta conquer Kurtz, who
Yeah,
is
I
whatever
do
it is in
think yeah,
life, you
like
know.
like a movie like this could definitely you'll definitely forget whatever happened that day
Hmm.
if you watch this,
Yeah.
um, because it demands your attention, um, and then like definitely if you like then you watch Colonel Kurtz like just mumbling in front of you, you'll be like yes, nothing matters, right?
Yeah. 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 It's like, I can kind of connect with all like different characters. I can connect with Willard and Kilgore and Kurtz all in different
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
Then
I definitely look see myself as Dennis Hopper because I'm usually just sitting at home and I'm like, do you think you know what it's like, man? Was he a kind man?
I do. I find that his like introduction so funny too when he's like, it's like that they're slowly pushing into the village, and you can barely see anyone's face, and then you just hear Dennis Hopper like start to yell out of
It's like,
out of the crowd.
hey,
It just
I'm American.
yeah, just not what you're expecting to hear at all. Yeah, it's
Yeah. No,
yeah,
it's like such an amazing film.
yeah.
Watch The Heart of Darkness next. You
I
probably
did I did actually watch that a couple of weeks ago too, which I think is why this is
also you
on my
watched it
mind.
first. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like really amazing. And then like I've read a bunch about the production as well.
Hmm.
So but it's also amazing then when you're watching it after to be like, but it all turned out to me, it's all gold when I watch it. Like they still really like delivered, like, and they kind of knew what movie they were in for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it yeah, it's funny I watched I think that's part of the reason why it was on my mind is because I've actually been reading Anthony Bourdain's director. Oh, I have it right here. Which if you haven't read it, I recommend it. In the Weeds. Um Tom Vitale, he was like one of the directors on Parts Unknown and No Reservations, and he's talking about the Congo episode of Parts Unknown.
Yeah, 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 which is a crazy one. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, such a great episode. And it's all based on Heart of Darkness
right.
um and so reading that I was like, oh man, that makes me want to watch this episode because he goes into, detail about the making of that episode um and then so it was making me want to watch that episode again and then watch Apocalypse Now and
Yeah,
Heart of Darkness. So then I watched Heart
yeah,
of Darkness and Apocalypse Now. Um and yeah, I mean just the lengths that Coppola went to just do that movie and like nearly killing himself uh just to do it. Yeah, it's I don't know, pretty crazy. And it's funny hearing his commentary on like making that movie and what it put him through and that he just got to a point where he seemed like he didn't care anymore. He was just gonna do it however he could.
yeah,
Um
yeah. That's just wild, and trajectory of the production and like where they thought the money was coming from, and eventually he's like putting up his house, and
yeah.
there's like a part in the documentary where he's like the some of the helicopters that he's using for the scene have to go back to like fight for the Philippine government or something like that. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
so crazy that they're like, what?
At any point, yeah, his like helicopters could just leave. Yeah, and he's like, I thought you just said five. I thought you said five, and like they're all pretty much leaving, and he's uh yeah. I don't even understand how they made the movie ultimately and that it became a success. It just I also
Yeah.
don't understand why I would never the second there's like the smallest amount of like conflict that happened that he had to deal with, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm just never gonna do this. Never. I'm never gonna make this movie.
Yeah.
That's where I would go. I don't, it's crazy like the motivation to,
Yeah, yeah, it'll
yeah.
always be my favorite like Francis Coppola movie just because it's like it kind of defines him for me. Like as just what he is. He was like a madman who was just like he like really he kind of was like in the system, but he tried to work outside of it, and he was always able to like just he was always going broke. He was always in tremendous amounts of debt, especially after Apocalypse, but he always seemed to manage to carry on, like selling whatever assets he had, finding money from whoever. Um, Yeah, like, and he would just put and he had like a family and everything. He would just put it all in everything, risk it all for his movies. That
Yeah.
he thought, like, specifically he thought this one would change the world. Which is, in ways, like, it does have a, where you're like, to some people it's a life-changing movie, I think, for sure. And now, he's making probably his last movie, and it's supposed to be the most it sounds like maybe his most ambitious movie yet. And it's like about a utopia and stuff like that. And that's very much, I think, what Francis Coppola always saw himself as, that, like, a guy who's like, he was trying to rebuild like the film industry in Northern California and start his own, like, um because he was like, fuck Hollywood and stuff like that. So he's always
Yeah.
seen himself as like a guy who's almost starting a utopia, or like trying to create freedom for artists and stuff like that. So yeah, even though Coppola, he was a madman, and apparently he always really cheated on his wife a lot. I'm still a big, like,
Uh,
Francis Coppola, like, guy, in just terms of like how, dedicated he was to, like, uh the art of film, and just making it easier for trying to make it easier for everyone to get their movie made. Yeah.
yeah, there's a really cool line in Heart of Darkness. I wish I could remember it exactly, but he's just talking about how he's like, I hope that this shows people that movie making doesn't have to just be about business or something, like it can be about the art and
Yeah.
something along those lines. I wish I could remember the exact quote, but it was a really like profound thing he said, and it was just
Yeah.
about clearly he didn't give a fuck about the financial and business aspects of it. Is it was he was really so passionate about just the art of making this movie, and yeah, I mean that's just inspiring if you also get disillusioned with the capitalist society that we live in, and you just want to
Yeah.
work on whatever creative endeavors you want. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think it builds even to the last movie. Like, to get the last movie made, he sold his winery, that
Wow.
is like,
Dang, yeah.
like his winery, like, became like something that you'll see on a Walgreens shelf, like, just next to all the other big brands. Like, he made it
Yeah.
that big, so I'm sure it was worth a lot.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you can pretty much buy that in any liquor store
anywhere,
or
like, you
grocery
can find it.
store.
It's not
Yeah.
like something special. You'd think it would be, like,
Yeah.
to find Francis Coppola's wine, that you have to go somewhere like specific, but no, you could find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow, I
Target
didn't know
has
that. That's
Coppola.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, all that is apocalypse now.
That's about mental health.
Yes. Ugh, that's cool. I'm excited for that movie whenever it may come out. I thought I saw that it was like he was having trouble getting a company to like distribute it.
There's been all
I
sorts
don't
of
know.
things going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much about it,
In
but
true
that's
Coppola fashion, there's been tons of
yeah.
production problems, and just things have been going insane. But I'm sure it's going to be something special for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, that's Apocalypse Now.
I'm glad we got to talk about it. I did not expect that. I was
Yeah.
expecting, for this episode, I was expecting like Miyazaki and stuff like.
I think I have a couple curveballs in there. Not like I think Apocalypse Now is probably the most surprising one, but um I tried to be uh as least as less as I tried to be the least pretentious as I could be, I guess, about some of these. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
All right, so my next one is a movie we've also done a full episode on. It's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I wanted to like pick like a straight comedy. Um, and also I feel like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is very much about, like, like attitude, towards life.
Hmm.
carrying on, and how you carry on, how you carry yourself, because you've got like one really grumpy guy who's in a way very like spoiled and wants his way, and because of that he's made himself like almost the antagonist to his daily existence, especially or especially to his traveling existence. And then you have a guy who's positive almost ignorantly, but you know, yet he seems to be like carrying through like all these like very unlucky things, like you know, in a much better way. And also who, Del Griffith is homeless. He's had a like a tragedy for his wife occur, and he's just you know, I don't know, in ways he almost like he like he's just pushing for Neil Page to like loosen up the whole movie and like learn to be like me, and he finally like does, and it forms into this like beautiful friendship. Um and yeah, I always like um and then I always get really like kind of emotional when I like watch this movie and I think about what John Candy's actual life was like, and how he was in
Yeah.
ways this guy. He was, like a stand-up who was like very lonely always and stuff like that, and had, I think, a number of issues. And how like how John Hughes in a way very much like wrote this role for him. Um and yeah, like this movie always comes out like I feel like I'm watching it around the holidays, and it really like lifts my spirits for like whatever I'm going through mentally during that time. Um there was also one time I was like watching it at my cousin Brendan's house, who's been on this podcast a number of times. And I remember like I was in a very overwhelming just stay part of my life, and it was like the night before I have to go home, and I was like, I really don't want to have to go home and like deal with that. And we were watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and it was like just so great just to watch that before I had to like leave and go back. um and I think we both were like laughing so hard because I think we grew up watching it, and it was like when you watch a movie and you're kind of like you're kind of like really getting into the reality of it.
Yeah.
Uh you're like we were like watching like sirens. Um you're kind of watching the movie and you're kind of like, man, when are they even gonna get going for the day? They just had lunch, like, oh, this is so ridiculous.
You're
We
thinking of
were
like
kind
the
of
logistics
yeah,
of
yeah, we were
their
kind of watching
actual,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of watching it like that, and it was just such a great escape. And it was like one of the most fun watches I've had of this movie. And yeah, yeah, I think an
Nice,
obvious
yeah.
choice.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because I feel like we all can be sometimes we're Dell, sometimes we're Steve Martin. I can't remember his character's name. But yeah, I definitely, yeah, I can feel, at least myself personally, feeling like that Steve Martin character where you
Yeah.
just,
I
yeah,
am all the
yeah,
time, too much, where I'm just like a walking through like my today, like just so grumpy because of how like I'm like, oh my God, I gotta drive here now. I gotta like park here when I get here.
yeah,
It's just like you're just annoyed by it. And um just to see someone who's like kind of almost in a crazy way, he's just like cool with all of it and like happy as he's doing it, is like it's like kind of it's hilarious because you understand like why he's so annoyed by it, but it also in the end you kind of like learn like maybe it is better to be the crazy guy who's got a good attitude and happy and
yeah,
friendly with everyone, and that like kind of is boding well for him. um and your peace state of mind especially.
yeah. A
Yeah,
lot of it, yeah, a lot of it's your perspective too, that I think, yeah, that's John Candy's character. Like, you could feel like the whole world is like out to get you, taking you down. But you kind of change your mindset a little bit and
Yeah,
go into it with more positive attitude, like Dell, with everything he's been through, then um, yeah, you can control that part of it, you know. Focusing on this is actually what my therapist always says is, focus on the things you can control, which is not a super profound thing. I'm sure every therapist in
that's like
history
something that everyone
has said that.
said.
But
John's there
she meant
like,
it for
I've
me,
never heard
really.
that. I've
Yeah.
never heard that one before. And she's like, wow, thank God I have this guy to
God,
keep coming
yeah.
paying me.
I can say anything to this guy. She just has
This
like a
guy's
list of like
this guy's
quotes to
clueless.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You missed 100% of the shots you don't take, John.
Wow, that is. Did you just come up with that? Yeah,
She's
it's
like, get out of here.
that is.
Okay.
But you know how like silly and like sort of generic that advice is? I feel like we forget about it a lot of times too.
Yeah,
You know, you need those little reminders of the simple things that you can control in life. It changes a lot. So yeah, that's a that's a good pick. That's such a great comfort holiday movie too. I'll kind of piggyback off of that and go with a movie, I Love You, Man.
oh, hell
Um,
yeah. Yeah, that's another good obvious pick. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally. It's man, this like your golden age of studio comedies list,
Right.
right? Isn't that what
Hmm.
it's called? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from that era. It's so there's a nostalgia aspect to it, but it's also um I feel, at least me, I can connect with both Peter Clavin, Paul Rudd's character, and Sidney Fife,
Same, same. I can as
Jason
both.
Segel's character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
it's
At this point I've been both. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they both ultimately they both need each other, and it's really about male like loneliness and friendship
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
um yeah, and I feel like it's a good watch to sort of just be that comforting like friend that you need, um, who completes you in a way.
Right.
Um,
Right.
because yeah, I've been Peter, where I've uh felt like, oh man, do I even have any friends? Like
Yeah. No,
I'm
I've
just
been
going
like
through life
I
and
see that last like part where he's got uh you know, the random groomsmen crew, and
yeah, I love that.
I've thought like if I ever get married, it's gonna be just like that, like the most random group.
Yeah, and it's so, I mean, when you get into another thing, we're talking about getting like into your 20s and stuff, like um it's been easy to make friends at certain jobs and stuff, but then when you leave that job, you think like, oh, we'll still hang out and whatever, and then all of a sudden you leave that job and then you don't see those friends you had
Yeah.
anymore. Um, and you're thinking like, oh man, well, I'm not just gonna find all my friends from work now. Like my friends are all from school growing up, and now you got to find them from work, or you got to find other means to do them. So, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like it's motivating in the sense of when you're feeling like Peter Clavin, like you need that connection with other
Hmm.
people more, that to like get out and show and be the more Sydney version of yourself, where you're,
Yeah.
being a bit more spontaneous and going to concerts or going to shows and
Yeah.
pursuing different hobbies.
Hmm.
But then there's the other side of the coin too, where you could fall too much into that of I
Yeah.
felt like Sydney, where I've been like, oh, all my friends are like adults now, and
Yeah.
they have children, and um they're going to bed super early because they have an important job in the morning, and they're not pursuing some random creative interest on the side. They're not working on their movie podcast on the side too. And then where I feel like, wow, I feel like I'm still like a kid, or like my friends are all growing up and doing adult stuff. Um, And so yeah, I think I Love You Man. It's helpful to find that like happy medium between the two.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, yeah, I'm with all that. I think I view this movie from mental health, like just in a maybe from like a slightly different lens, because I think one of the reasons why I like watching this movie to feel better is because I feel like the world is so like fabricated and uh it's so perfect in here in I Love You Man that like it's like and all the problems in it are like the biggest problem is like, oh, he's like getting married to like the love of his life, but he needs to like meet a friend, like, and it leans into that, and like they're just
yeah.
and even though like there is conflict, there's like the smallest of conflict of like these two need to like are like need each other. They become kind of codependent, I guess, is
Yeah.
the main thing. They're still just like having a ton of fun the whole time. And the movie's just a fun ride. And I think that's like why I always like get so into it is because it's like say if you're gonna live in Los Angeles too, it's like the perfect these guys have the perfect lives
Yeah.
um as well. And like yeah, it's like I'm just trying to think of things they say, but they're always saying things like, "Oh yeah, we're going to the me and Rashida Jones, we're gonna be at the flea market in Pasadena on Saturday, blah blah blah." And like, hey, you wanna meet? I'm about to take a walk on the Venice boardwalk in 10 minutes. You're like,
Yeah.
those tacos were the shit. And like
Yeah.
he's like, I'm selling Ferrigno's house, like in the hills somewhere. And they're just like, oh yeah, me and the buddies were gonna do a hike in Malibu, but they all had to bail. It's just like everyone's like even though like these guys are like lonely and like their lives are like great, like
Yeah.
it's they like he sells real estate in LA. He's like he seems Jason Segel's like a self-employed investor that lives like by the water. Like it's and I think they get married in Santa Barbara.
Oh yeah.
It's just like a solid, it's like a perfect rom-com because it utilizes the setting um very well. It's just fun. It's just like a fun, like
Yeah.
it's just fun to hang out with these guys, like doing all these activities pretty much.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because regardless of all that sappy character bullshit I was talking about, it's just a funny, good hang of a movie.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of
Um,
montages
just
of these
feel good.
guys like playing Rush in a man cave. It's just
Yeah.
guys doing all these things that everyone wants to be doing, really.
Yeah.
Like
They
he like leaves his job whenever he wants to go to Sydney's. It's like this
yeah.
is this is great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a fun time. Yeah, and I've always this has always been like a um I don't know, just one of those comfort movies that
Yeah.
I watch maybe once a year, honestly.
Yeah, me
Just
too. Like
yeah.
Sunday night's HBO. Have you ever seen
It's our
premium
HBO night.
programming on HBO?
It's not TV, it's HBO. Yeah. Yeah, it's and it's just yeah, it is a great LA movie too. It makes me kind of want to live in LA. And I brought this up for our soundtracks episode over
Yeah,
a
yeah,
year ago, the most
yeah.
recent one we did. But yeah,
It's got that other song that like is it's got that song that's also in Horrible Bosses. That like da 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 da. It's like in so
ah,
many comedies at this time. Da da da
I don't know
da
if I
da da
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
da
yes.
da da.
Spoon. Yeah, the underdog Spoon.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
which is such like a 2008
hmm
song.
It was
It's
in
just
every comedy.
yes, you're right. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, it had that soundtrack too that was just so much of its time.
Yeah.
But in a perfect way. Yeah.
Yeah, and both of these guys who like everyone loves are kind of like, really performing hard in this, I feel like too.
Yeah.
Yeah. They like really took a lot of ownership over these roles and had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that that I Love You Man is underrated.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Actually, it was Rick Rooney from high school who loaned me this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Dang. It's all coming together. I wonder if that's how I was introduced to it too, with was Rick. Rick was
Yeah.
always he always had movies and
Yeah, he would like he always would loan me escapist rom-coms kind of like this.
Yeah. Well, that's I Love You, Man.
All right, my next one is I wanted to do another Nancy Myers movie for the
Nice.
mental health episode. Uh The Intern could have easily been on here, but I wanted to talk about a different one. Um a ridiculous movie in 2006 called The Holiday, uh, which stars Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet, Jude Law, and Jack Black. Um, have you seen The Holiday?
I have not. I feel like I know about it
Yeah.
a decent amount just from pop culture or whatever, but yeah, I've never actually seen it.
I'd recommend it. It's really ridiculous, but I'd recommend it. So in The Holiday, Kate Winslet and Cameron Diaz are both like going through breakups. So they want to get away. So they find each other online and basically decide to switch homes for the holiday, and
Okay.
get away. So Kate Winslet lives in this like small town in England in this kind of like really picturesque house. Um, and then Cameron Diaz lives in like LA in the Hollywood Hills or something somewhere. Uh, and has also a very nice house. They both have very nice houses, just very different settings. Um, Cameron Diaz is she's not like an actress she's like a trailer editor, which is like so funny. She's like, people were like, you are the most successful trailer editor in all of Hollywood. And John Krasinski's like one of like works for her. It's like so funny. Um and then Jack Black in this movie is a he's like a composer in LA. So he'll like drive up and he's like got this iconic score playing in his car that he's listening to. He's like, "This is the great Ennio Morricone." And so this movie's really ridiculous, but I will say it's just such a great escape because all of it feels so unreal as um these two iconic actresses in it are both trying to escape. Um, and Kate Winslet meets like an old screenwriter from like the 40s in it who's like written a bunch of movies who like is a neighbor of Cameron Diaz. Um, and he's like, did you watch those movies I sent you? They're all from like the 40s." She said, she's like, "Yes, they were so good." And like, and there's a lot of like, I don't know, like trying to callbacks or just like, I don't know, just uh like a romance for like classic Hollywood in this movie. Like she's like, "Was Hollywood really as great back then as everyone imagined?" And he was like, "It was better."
Oh
And
wow.
you get to go to like a record store with Jack Black as he like hums like movie scores in it, and it's like a great just escape, pretty much. All right, yeah, that's the holiday.
I wasn't expecting that one either, but it's not like the Apocalypse Now surprise,
Yeah,
but it's a
very
different
different
kind of
from him.
surprise.
Yeah.
I'll go with Joe versus the Volcano,
Oh,
which
yeah, which has been brought up a lot.
yeah, in the past year, I feel like we talked about it a decent amount. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I didn't know about this
Similar to the
movie for a
Truman
long
Show
time.
in a way, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, it kind of gives me the same sort of feeling, I guess, about life. And yeah, I didn't know about this movie like at all growing up or anything. It wasn't until later in life that I found out about it. But yeah, I think it kind of sets up as like a straightforward like guy hates his job and now he's like Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's got this terminal illness, so he goes on and lives his life. But I feel like it takes a very non-straightforward path after that. And it doesn't take the cliched route of like life is worth living and like do it like
No,
this is
yeah,
what you
yeah.
need, like, and not some like
Right.
phony inspirational. It's because he kind of gets like pretty cynical about it. He's like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna buy all this shit in New York City, hire a limo driver, um
Hmm.
and then yeah, this guy presents him with this offer to jump into a volcano to save this tribe. And yeah, it's kind of like now it's I don't know, it doesn't go in like this phony inspirational way, but it's ba death basically gave him a reason to live
Yeah.
finally. And yeah, and I think that's a good reminder too of not because this is, I don't know, this is maybe a darker thing about how in like my dark days of really being depressed is that like, oh well, if I get a terminal illness or something tomorrow, then I'll do all these things that I have been wanting to do with my life. Then I'll quit my job and go travel and do this or
Hmm.
whatever. But yeah, I think by the end of the movie, uh, Joe is very much like found like a happiness in life. I don't know, just the people and experience of life that gave him more of that meaning. And then at the end, he, thanks God or whatever higher power. Um, he's kind of like accepted that it's the end, but he is more so like appreciative of life and what he had rather than just being like, yeah, yeah, fuck everything. I'll just jump in for those days when you just feel like, fuck the world. I'm just gonna jump in a volcano and end this whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
think it
almost like
always,
a little metaphor for the greater philosophical thing of that we're all facing of just that we mainly live because this is temporary, you know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I just think the movie takes a lot of different paths that aren't typical for a movie like this. And it's a very like whimsical, quirky, funny, rom-com too.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's like just a great, like, kind of heartwarming, inspiring feeling after it. Um, so yeah, yeah, I found this one to be a comfort movie lately, um, that I really like. And so yeah, it's a perfect like mental health film. And again, like I think if th this could have been way more like um typical, like something like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which isn't, I
Yeah.
do, I
That's like
like
the
that movie.
inspirational like
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
when I saw that in like when I was 16, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
get
That's
busy
life.
living, man.
Yeah. Yeah, like Shawshank. Yeah, get busy living or get busy dying. Like
Yeah.
that's, yeah, kind of that basic simpleton like viewpoint. Um,
Sean
which I
Penn doesn't
yeah.
always take the picture. Sometimes he just like sits with the moment.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That I forgot Sean Penn is in that as like he's that, what is he, like a photographer or something?
Yeah, yeah, the
Yeah.
one he's trying to chase down.
That's right. Yeah. But that is, I do like that movie too, and it's a nice movie, but it is just sort of the like stock, seems
Yeah,
like this stock inspirational, go live your life type of movie. Um, yeah, and Joe versus the Volcano, there's a little bit more, there's some cynicism in it, there's
yeah,
quirk to it, and it's yeah, I think it's just a funny, just a yeah, just a funny movie, but it's also, it says a lot about life too, and yeah, so it's an easy one for this list.
okay. My next one is kind of in the perfect days category. Um it's Jim Jarmusch's Paterson. Um which is a movie I could do a whole episode on. So I'll try to not go too crazy here, but kind of like Perfect Days. This is a movie very about much about routine and simplicity and like kind of a Zen approach to living. Uh, like Paterson's like a full week in uh Paterson's life, and it just kind of shows his very simple routine of how he wakes up next to his um wife or girlfriend every day, kisses her goodbye, uh, goes to work with his bagged, eats cereal, goes to work with his bagged lunch, maybe like works on a poem real quick before he starts his bus route for the day, and then he just there's that these really like kind of very chill, calming, uh, like just like dissolve filled montages of Paterson just driving the bus and kind of just I take it as this he's very just much giving in to that repetitiveness and the routine of just doing that every day, of driving the bus. There's no like positive or negative feeling ever towards it, directed towards what his job is of being a bus driver. Um, and then, he gets off every day, he goes and sees his wife or girlfriend, and she has like all this excitement about like something she's new and inspired to do today. And it kind of, that excitement kind of fuels his day-to-day existence and also his poetry. He's got like a dog he takes for a walk. Like his routine is very set. Like
Yeah.
she will say during dinner, can you do this before you and the dog go on your walk? Like him and his dog have their nightly walk, and then he stops at the same bar and has a beer and talks to the bartender there. And kind of like Perfect Days, there's like slight just changes in the routine each day that you'll see. And yeah, Patterson really whenever I'm very sick of a job and I really feel like I need to like get a better mindset about it so that I can get through it. I Patterson's an easy watch to just like help me get into that mindset of it. And it'll really make me feel more at peace about the day-to-dayness of life. Cause kind of like Perfect Days, Patterson's kind of about finding the beauty in just the mundaneness of daily life.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, yeah. And there are moments towards the end where he is kind of like when he loses his poetry book from
Mhm.
the dog. Spoilers. It's like the only thing you could really spoil about this movie, but he's kind of talking to this Japanese poet he meets, and he's like, "Are you also a poet from Paterson, New Jersey?" And he's like, "No, I'm just a I'm just a bus driver." And so it's like there is an element of like where he wants to be seen as a great poet, but it's not, the movie's not really about that, and like there
Yeah.
it is, his wife and girlfriend also wants him to, she's like, please make copies of your poems so you can like, you know they could be shared one day and stuff like that. And there is a little bit of that, and the movie is about following your dreams, but it's not really about like, it's not about a guy who's trying to break into the poetry scene. It's not like about that. It's not like Inside Llewyn Davis where he's on his last leg and he, um if he doesn't make it, and if he doesn't get to perform before Lex Grossman in Chicago and it doesn't go well, he's done, he's gonna ship off. It's not really about that. It's there's more of a spiritual thing to Paterson about day-to-day living that it's really refreshing, for sure.
Mhm. All right. Well, my next one, I said I was gonna go unpretentious, and this is one of them.
All right.
Because if you're too pretentious for this movie, then go fuck yourself. No, I don't.
Whoa.
I know that was harsh. But I'm going with Mr. Bean's Holiday, and I don't know
I've
if you've
never
seen
seen
this.
this, no.
I'm looking on Letterboxd now, and there's actually only two people that I follow have actually seen this or interacted with this at all. But I happen to be like we were talking about Jim Carrey, Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson, I guess I would say, and Jim Carrey were probably two of my like comedic heroes
Okay.
growing up. Um, and I feel like I didn't know a lot of people that really paid attention to Mr. Bean. Um, because we had like the box set because one of our family friends was like into it too. And my sister and I would just watch Mr. Bean all the time. We would
Hmm.
do the little like gags to each other, like the
Hmm.
just whatever, goofy hijinks that Mr. Bean gets himself into. Yeah, so there's an original like Bean movie in the 90s, which is fine. I'm not a huge fan of that one. But then in 2007, Mr. Bean's Holiday came out. And yeah, I just gotta say it's like like what's his name? Tati. Tati has
Jock
like
Tati.
those there's not a whole lot of dialogue. It's very goofy, physical comedy, slapstick, almost outdated in a way. But Rowan Atkinson is like a modern day Tati or Buster Keaton when it comes to physical comedy. And it's such like a simple movie of Mr. Bean is going on vacation to France,
Hmm.
to Cannes actually, and he inadvertently causes this father to miss this train that his son is on, and then he's kind of responsible for this to get this child back to his father. Um, and it just turns into this comedy of Mr. Bean getting himself into all this trouble and uh, these different scenarios where he's trying to make money to get to pay for the train and find the dad and like
Hmm.
all these like classic mix-ups that happen. And yeah, it's really the reason I'm bringing this one up is just because it's a very like stupid, silly movie that'll kind of just make you if you allow yourself to like get into the movie, you'll just really forget about anything bad
Anything
in the
that
world,
exists.
You'll think that the world really is this that if Mr. Bean really existed in real life, he'd probably get like punched. He'd probably get his ass beat by people who he's accidentally like causing havoc to. But in this world, everybody's just like goofy and like thinks that he's just this like regular guy that exists in the world, which he's definitely not. And so yeah, this one is really just like a comfort, easy watch that it hasn't this very pleasant like French film score that it's like
Hmm.
it's kind of it feels like something from like the 60s or
Yeah, it's like the French New Wave, but it's this silly Mr. Bean movie.
yeah.
That's cool.
And I genuinely en really enjoy the movie.
How many Mr. Bean movies are there?
I think there's just the two. I think it's just the one in the 90s
Hmm.
and then this one.
So this is like the remake.
But it's not even a remake. It's like a completely new movie. The one in the 90s, he like comes to I think Los Angeles and he stays with this like art dealer and his family and
Yeah.
it's like a classic movie of this guy is really career focused and then all of a sudden this weirdo it's like planes, trains, and automobiles almost. Mr. Bean, except he's completely unhinged and deranged, but he comes in and messes up this guy's life, um, who's like so career focused and a
Hmm.
family man and all this stuff. So yeah, and then this one is completely different. It's also very different because it's years after the Mr. Bean series
Hmm.
in England was over. So it's kind of like a return to the character for Rowan Atkinson. But yeah.
I want to check that out. I'm curious.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
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 I'll piggyback that off that one. And I'll do something that's physical comedy. As I picked a Charlie Chaplin uh Modern Times.
Oh,
Because I feel like I felt obligated to pick movies um from like the 30s and 40s, even though I haven't. I only this is only it's only my first one. But I just because I feel like back then movies were made specifically like, they were very formulaic and a lot of them were the same, but like they were made for people's mental health. Like they were made so that people could go to the cinema and just escape. Um, and it was like a kind of a beautiful time where people were collectively going and like, getting lost into the eyes of like Audrey Hepburn or something like that, or and just watching Humphrey Bogart and just like the movies were built for like adventure or romance, humor, or just like they were just built for escape. And specifically like something like Charlie Chaplin in modern times, you have like, people watch these for like maybe the greatest of escapes, laughter. And I feel like what's great about these old silent comedies where it's like modern times or like Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton or Harold Lloyd is that they are very um translatable to anybody, no matter what like culture or age. Um I was listening to I think like Greta Gerwig is on some podcast, and she was talking about how like I think they showed Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton to like a bunch of young kids nowadays. Um, Young kids who have like TikTok and stuff like that. Like if you see young kids nowadays, they have iPads as their toys. It's really messed up.
Yeah.
And but yet she said they showed it to a bunch of kids and these kids were like dying because it's like these are timeless. And even though they're black and white, even though there's no dialogue, just the physical comedy, the art of the physical comedy and the stunts that these guys pulled off is just timeless and always will be amusing to people and especially children. And
Mm,
um yeah, and especially something like Modern Times where it's about like a guy who's like trying to work in a factory at the beginning and then is eventually like falling in love. What a greater escape for your own life. And that's just what these movies were built for, and I think they did just such a great job of it. um and I wish that cinema was still had some of this in it, because cinema is so much more. The movies that are built for escape now are also like, you know they're just brands. It's about promoting product and promoting Coca-Cola. It's more just
yeah.
advertising and marketing, and it sucks. So
Yeah.
I miss this type of stuff. Not like I ever like lived during modern times, but
Miss those days,
yeah, yeah,
the 30s. Yeah.
yeah. But in ways like Jim Carrey is like a Chaplin, Peter Sellers descendant in movies. So in ways we
Yeah.
did grow up with a version of this, very different
Yeah.
version.
Universal humor, I guess, is like
Right.
physical
Yeah.
comedy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's also why like Michael Richards was going back to the Weird Al movie from last week. Michael Richards is so good because of his just physical humor, and you don't even need to know what he's saying. Say if you watch Seinfeld, it's just like his face and the way he's moving and going about everything is just, you're like, this guy's up to something, or you can't. He's
Yeah.
just hilarious.
I am gonna go with uh Hot Rod. Um
Nice.
and this one is solely because
More
it
physical
is
comedy. Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, actually. Maybe that's the key to happiness is physical comedy. Um solely just because it's just a every now and then you just need a dumb comedy like this to, I don't know, reset
Yeah.
reset your mood. And I think something from this era, like I was talking about with I Love You Man too, this era of like middle school to high school where it's easy to fall into like the nostalgia of that, but it's kind of comforting too when you see like a comedy movie with a young Andy Samberg and Bill Hader and
Yeah.
Yorma from Lonely
Danny
Island,
McBride.
Danny McBride, like all these guys that were like the kings when we were
Hmm.
growing up. And yeah, it's just that it's another like honest, generally low stakes comedy with a lot of ridiculous things that happen in it, and with these familiar people that made you laugh when you were younger. That it's always like good to return to. Um,
Yeah. I
and
think this is like one of the funniest movies ever, for
yeah,
sure.
and it still absolutely holds up, um, and something too. I mean, I just find comfort in. Um, well, it's obviously dangerous to go back into, that nostalgia mindset too much where you're, um, constantly just living in the past, trying to recreate the past. But there is a
Yeah.
comfort to it. And I do also, there's been times recently where I've been like, uh, feeling a little anxious or stressed out, and I go back and watch like old SNL episodes from around this time too, when it was like Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, Fred Armisen, Will Forte. Like I'll go back and watch those because yeah, it kind of brings a comfort, and it feels, um, it brings you back to a time when life didn't have all the responsibilities and
Yeah.
everything that you
Yeah.
have to deal with
Oh, there's
daily.
that Isla Fisher quote, where she's like, everyone else got grew up and got boring, but you stayed exactly the same. And like
Yeah.
in this movie, and I think in this movie and in real life, that is both like a sad thing and also like a kind of inspirational thing when someone who just refuses to grow up
Yeah.
and like clings to their dreams so hard, from their childhood.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like, yeah, in life you have to have a little bit of both. You kind of have to let go of some of the grown-up things to not lose like the spark that'll like push you forward, because then you do become boring and um or just coasting through life. But yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think Hot Rod is just a good one that yeah, it's kind of inspiring too, just these guys making things together like with their friends, and
Yeah.
super like motivated to do it no matter how much shit
Yeah.
other people give them or whatever else goes wrong.
Even
Yeah,
during
it's
like
just
the
a solid
sad
comedy.
moments in Hot Rod, like whenever he's like comes home and he's talking to the mom and she's like, it's Frank. It's his heart. He don't know how much we didn't think you could handle it. It's like I could handle it. It's just like the funniest, like it's still the funniest shit if it's like a sad like scene, sad
Yeah.
exposition scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Just such a funny movie. Um, so yeah, that's just my pick of a silly comedy you got to throw on every now and then. Um, that'll never get old.
All right, nice. Well, all right, my final pick is Barbie.
Oh,
Um yeah, to go with a recent one that was popular and in the theater. Yeah, I think Barbie, like I had just like moved and I was working a lot and Barbie just came at the perfect time where I went to the theater and I was kind of thinking like I'm seeing something, I know that like it's gonna be great because it's Greta Gerwig and it's written by her and Noah Baumbach. I know it's gonna be good, but like I think I felt like so much like there's so many like women and their daughters going in all pink. Like there's so much about the I don't know the product of it and the I
the
don't know
spectacle.
the spectacle of it that I'm like okay, let's go see with it. I almost like removed myself from the creator, how like into the creators I am, because I'm thinking, no, this is like a big budget movie, Hollywood movie now, or something like that. But um yeah, Barbie was like such a great escape, and made me laugh so much. And also in the end sent a great message. Um and it like really made me feel very uplifted at the end of it. And I think it also took a lot of inspiration from like what I'm saying, like movies from the 30s and 40s that were there to be like quick-witted, funny, entertaining. Um, you I just felt like I'm watching Howard Hawks while I was watching it, and then also took a lot of inspiration from like, say like Gene Kelly and like musicals and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and with all the musical numbers. Uh yeah, and I think a lot of people um were surprised to find themselves very like moved and uplifted by Barbie after it. And yeah.
Yeah, that's a great pick too. It is, I mean, at the end too, it's I was always forget that like how it ends is super
Yeah.
inspirational and uplifting. Like it gets real
Yeah,
back
the
in.
Billie Eilish number is so great, and the ending reminds me of like something that would happen in Toy Story. Like the movie really
Yeah.
reminds me of Toy Story too, which as it should, because they are all playing toys. And
Yeah.
that are trying to find and discover themselves. And Toy Story movies are also fantastic mental health movies.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, they're while they're about toys, they're about all of us at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Well, nice. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all I have to say about Barbie, probably. But yeah, that's a wrap on our mental health episode for now. I'm sure we will need another one coming up, and you guys all will need another one coming up. But just know you can turn to movies when you're feeling overwhelmed and depressed, and you can also turn to us, the Cinebums, if you're feeling overwhelmed and depressed, in our many episodes that we've done over the years to escape from our lives.
Yeah.
Um, Not to John and I directly. Do not go to John's place and ask him to have a beer, because he will most likely tell you that he will and then cancel later.
Yeah. I'll be too anxious to follow through. So, yeah.
Same with me. I will be a yes man until I'm on my own, and I'll be like, send a long text on why I can't.
Something came up. Yeah. Um,